Welcome to LeadWisely by WonderTour. We are going to start with some tough questions about leadership by looking at popular media properties. So, what does the movie Interstellar by Christopher Nolan tell us about how humans should pursue and leverage technology? So, Drew, why don't you just kick us off? Give me a moment at the beginning, early in this movie, where we start to think about this element. What is Interstellar's viewpoint on technology?
This is a great one, Brian. In our first 100 episodes that we did via podcast, we looked at Interstellar a couple times. This is my favorite movie of all time. That's why we're starting here with Lead Wisely. There's so many tech moments in this movie. To me, what sticks out is the overall theme of how Cooper interacts with technology. Cooper is this brilliant tech expert, right? He's an engineer. He's developed all this automation around his farm. He's tracking down this drone at the beginning of the movie. And it really shows us that in this world where it's all about survival, it's all about how much food do we have left? Are we going to be able to have medical supplies to be able to overcome the next crisis? Cooper is always looking beyond that. And to me, what's interesting is what his disposition is towards technology. Each of us has a lot to think about as leaders moving forward. Technology has increased at an increasing rate, it feels like, over the past couple of years, culminating with the moment that we're in right now with, Gen AI, and how fast is that going to move and what implications is it going to have on the way that we live, the way that we work together, the relationships that we have, right? So for me, it's not about, for Cooper, how good he is with technology or any of these things, but instead it's about the fact that he sees technology as a way to accomplish his mission, as a way to pursue purpose. And I think that is what we can take away as leaders here. So maybe, Brian, let me turn it back over to you. Talk to me about how Cooper exhibits that purpose, how he uses technology to accomplish his purpose, and then we can start to iterate around how we can use it to accomplish our purpose and not to create more problems and pain.
Yeah, I think we'll get into this much deeper as we go through this episode here, but just for this intro, what I want to suggest is that the scene with the drone is really great because it lays out a couple themes we're going to talk about in this movie. But Cooper at the moment has a purpose that he's not very excited about, but he's sort of shackled to, right? He's a farmer and he has to make food. He wants to be a pilot. He wants to be an explorer. He wants to be a leader of new frontiers, but he's a farmer, right? So he's been repurposed, but he's made that decision for himself, right? His circumstances have forced him to decide, like, okay, well, if I'm going to be a farmer, I'm going to be a farmer who uses automation, and I'm going to be a farmer who, tries to find ways to, maximize my available resources. This Indian drone that's been flying around the world for 15 years and has finally come down, he's going to go lobotomize it, take its brain out, and put it in a tractor. It's also getting repurposed, right? He's using technology to serve his purpose. He's giving it a new purpose, but it doesn't get to decide, right? He's not implying that this AI drone has decided that it wants to become a tractor, right? It's showing us that Cooper, as the human, it has the agency here and is deciding what the appropriate thing is to do in his environment. And he's leveraging technology whatever way he can. And we're going to see that recurring throughout the course of this movie. We're going to see humans struggling with their purposes and humans struggling with how to best maximize the resources and technologies they have around them. But there are pitfalls around making the technology the purpose. There are pitfalls about trusting the technology blindly to tell you what to do. And we'll see some of that in the movie too. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. This is going to be great.
And isn't that something that we see right now today? It seems like technology does good things for us. There's other times we look at it and it does bad things for us. There's meh technology where some good, some bad. That's probably where a lot of it sits. There's it's yet to be revealed technology where it's like, I don't know yet about Gen AI. Like, could be good, could be bad, something like that. But when we really take a step back from is technology good, is technology bad, and instead focus on a mission, focus on purpose, focus on humanity and not on the technology itself, I think that's how we're going to see Cooper be successful and eventually accomplish this great feat that he and Murph and the other scientists and heroes of this movie accomplish.
Yeah, and this will be, coming from two self-professed technology nerds who are trying to learn how to become wiser leaders. That's going to be the whole point of this conversation, right? And of our next batch of episodes here on Wonder Tours, we're going to be talking about technology and humans and how they interact and how do we best leverage it and what leadership lessons can we learn from that. So with that, I think it might be time to cue the intro music. Hi, I'm Brian Nutwell.
And I'm Drew Perot.
And we are on a journey to become better leaders by touring fantastic worlds and inspiring lore by going on a Wonder Tour.
We connect leadership concepts to story context because it sticks to our brains better. You can find out more at WonderTourPodcast.com.
Now, you may be new to us here at Wonder Tour. This is a new initiative for us. Moving to the video format. So we have 100 episodes of a podcast under our belts where we have taken popular media properties that you have almost certainly heard of and most likely watched, everything from Star Wars to the Marvel movies to the Christopher Nolan adventures. And we have been using them to tease out universal leadership lessons and theories about how people solve problems together and how they use the tools and environment around them and what this concept of a magnanimous leader looks like to us and how we can leverage those lessons in our business lives and our everyday lives as leaders, especially in the technology space, but really not limiting to that. So on the backside of those 100 episodes, we're really excited to revisit one of our favorite movies, Interstellar, which is both a delightful movie and a really rich source of conversation. And in this moment, as Drew mentioned in our intro, we're going to spend the next couple episodes talking specifically about humans and machines and how they interact and how leaders should think about taking advantage of technology, whether that's physical technology or the digital technologies that we've known and loved for the last 30 years, or this emerging class of cognitive digital technologies around generative AI and some of those related tools, which ask a lot of really compelling questions about how should we behave and what purpose should we have. So that's going to be our sort of the angle we'd like to take on it. And with that, we are going to add a new element to our branding. So LeadWisely is the title of this podcast as part of the Wonder Tour empire. So we're really looking forward to having you along with us for the ride. And let's get started with the conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Brian, for reminding everybody kind of where we've been and where we're going. And for us, Wonder Tour has always just been about how can we learn these lessons faster? How can we make them more impactful? And what we noticed was we love traditional leadership content. That stuff is all really, really good. We love self-development content, but connecting it to stories is what allows us to be able to contextualize it for our own scenarios, to be able to see like, oh, hey, like maybe am I the Luke Skywalker in this situation? Am I the Han Solo in this situation? You know, could I act like this character acts in this scene, and maybe what would be the results of that? And so we've seen that Interstellar is a great property, like you said, to go back to here. As we talked about in our kind of opening segment of the video, I think the big question that Interstellar asks us as it relates to our current human-machine interaction series on Wonder Tour is really, what is the purpose of technology and how should we interact with it? And I'm scared sometimes, to be honest with you, when I look and see humans designing solutions around feasibility. Just like, oh, well, we could do this with technology. So, and what you get with that a lot of times, right, is some of the very mixed bag or negative technologies that we go and create. And it just creates more addictions for humans, right? It creates less purpose for humans. It actually waters down what humans are meant to do, what our mission is. And that you could easily see that happening to Cooper in Interstellar, couldn't you? It's like he could very easily get watered down with this idea of, I'm going to create the best farming automation, and this farming automation is going to optimize this plot of land to be the best that it possibly can be. And there would be some benefit to that, even. This wouldn't even be like a bad usage of technology. But guess what? Then every single one of those humans is going to die on this blight planet.
Right. So this is not a movie review site, so we're not going to recap the entire movie. But for context, of course, in the Interstellar, the setup is that the planet is failing, is not going to provide us enough food, is dying, and so humans have to find other places to live. And so we have these two parallel technology initiatives that are proceeding. One is Cooper gets off the planet on a spaceship as part of this Hail Mary mission to go find one of these three other planets that might work, and at the same time his daughter Murph is left behind on the planet with Dr. Brand, and they're trying to solve this incredibly complicated series of equations about gravity so that they can lift the other humans off the planet and get them into space to wherever they need to go. So in both cases, they have this existential threat, and you have this scientific, technological, rational solution to it. And they're both it's pretty dire. So of course, this is a dramatic Hollywood setup for a movie. This is a dramatic Hollywood sort of a problem to have, but we see smaller versions of this impending disaster problem happen repeatedly throughout the movie. Right, very nice symmetrical structure, very nice pyramid structure to the movie, and so there's recurring lessons that we have to learn, that the characters have to learn about how you should behave and how you should use your technology, and what does an effective leader look like, because we've got some real conflicts and motivation here. We've got some real we find out some hidden agendas and some people that should know better that are making bad decisions and all sorts of fun things that are happening. So I wanted to talk about one of our early lessons in this movie, or one of our early big scenes in the movie, right, is where they've gotten to the first planet that they decide to investigate, the Miller's planet, which is the watery world. They went through the wormhole. They're circling the planet. It's too close to the black hole, so they know they're going to lose a bunch of time by going down to the surface of the planet and coming back, but they haven't completely digested what that means. And they get down there and they found out that locally it's only been 45 minutes since the last explorer landed. Ship is gone, and they're about to be destroyed by a giant wave. So again, another impending disaster. Not only is humanity's extinction happening, but now we have the giant wave, and we have a very short time to respond.
On WonderTour, we love Cooper because he embodies the conflict that it is to be a leader, to have to make the tough decisions, to have to own those decisions, to have to tell people things that they don't want to hear or that they don't want to do. He's kind of the perfect space explorer. And what I see here is a question of, can we use technology? How can we use technology when you get into a crisis? I mean, talk about a crisis. There's no bigger crisis than we're about to die, and every minute that we waste is going to cost us like a % chance that the Earth survives, essentially. Something to that end, basically. We can't afford any of this time because the Earth is dying and we're losing it at 7 years per hour. It's brutal. But what we see is Cooper leverages stress to his benefit, a thing that machines don't have, right? Machines cannot experience stress, at least not in 2023, the way that we currently have the AI that we work with or the logical machines that we've programmed. It doesn't experience stress. But Cooper, you see it. You see like the veins come out on his face. He is freaking out, but he's using that stress to drive to something, right? Those emotions of the feeling that he could lose his children, that he could lose the mission, and he's driving it. And so he quickly goes into command and control mode. It's like, I need to free up Amelia Brand. She's stuck onto this thing. She's tied to this idea. We need the data, but Cooper can see the bigger picture, right? He's like, we don't need the data because we're not going to make it off the planet with the data. So get back here. And then what he does, though, is he leverages the robot companion TARS to be able to do a thing that humans can't necessarily do. It's like, TARS, go rescue Amelia. Humans can't move fast enough. Doyle's out there frozen. The other team member, Doyle, is literally just frozen. He's not moving back to the ship. He's not moving towards Amelia. He doesn't know what to do. But the machine has no stress that's keeping it frozen. It also has no stress that's getting it moving, but Cooper can push it. So I don't know, Brian, talk to me a little bit about that, because I think we're just, as we do on WonderTour, kind of uncovering right now the idea that machines don't experience stress and that can both be a positive and a negative thing.
Yeah, well, and that's, without getting too far down the AI rabbit hole quite yet, the way Tars is presented is really interesting, right? So he's this robot companion who's presented as very clearly not, he's not C3PO. He's not an android that looks like a human, like he's this big rectangular blocky thing. Um, but from an interaction standpoint, they've designed him to have some human-like character, and in particular, he's got this humor setting that they're turning up and down during the course of the movie, where it's he's been designed with some thought as to he can do some things that humans can't do on the mission. Both his processing power and his reflexes and his physical force. But they've rounded off some edges of his interactions so that they seem more human-like. But that makes it evident that that's very artificial, right? That you can turn it up and down, right? It's not intrinsic to the way Tars is wired up or trained. It's just it's a thing that they've programmed into him to make him a little bit friendlier to have around in a small space capsule for years at a time. And so, yeah, so Cooper's using this threat, the impending wave, right, to motivate him. Like, we have to do something right now, right? And so we don't have time to waste around, worrying about what's going to happen. We just have to use what we've got. So I've got to get the engines restarted. I can't go save him. The Dr. Brand, Amelia, I got to send Tars after her. So he's just using whatever resources are available at the moment, because that's the only possible path, right? He looks at the options. There's a crisis. The only way that this can work is if two or three of these things come together. So that's what we're going to try to do. And that's it's portrayed, it's very heroic, but it's also one of those leadership skills, right? When something bad is happening in your environment, in your office, in your company, in your industry, in your, whatever, if somebody brings that problem to you, or you become aware of it and you're in a meeting with your team, you're going to get a variety of reactions. You're going to get people that freeze. You're going to get people that panic. You're going to get people that are like, oh, I'm going to keep doing the thing I was doing anyway, right? Right? All of those things are going to happen. And it will not be helpful for you to go, oh my goodness, there's a giant wave, we're doomed, right? We're just sitting here and wait for the wave to hit us, right? It will not be helpful for you to go, well, I don't think the wave's really going to hit us like that. That can't be true. That's not the way we work. It's somebody else's problem, somebody else's fault that there's a wave, right? Those things are not helpful. The thing that is helpful is we only have one possible path out of this, right? We won't even know if it'll work. But anyway, the version of us surviving this involves several things going right. So I need you to do this, and you to do that, and you to do that. Not I personally will solve the whole problem. Not I personally will will rescue us. But this is what is needed to get moving. And so Tars is inherently obedient. He's he's a robot, so he's going to go basically do what he's told. But that evidence of we're starting to move, people are starting to do things, we have a chance, maybe this will work, will unlock the other team members. Right, the other team member is like, okay, fine, I'll help you get onto the ship. I'll help unblock the engines. You can, once you start moving, then you're moving towards a solution. And so that's, like you say, he's portrayed as a really effective leader, partly because of that decisiveness, but also partly because his solution involves thinking about the big picture and all the individual moving parts and trying to connect them as skillfully as possible.
And this is something that we see as, even if a machine can develop the capability to see that big picture and to understand all of the different inputs and potential outputs and stuff like that, what can a human do differently than what a machine can do? And, just one example was, humans are biological life forms, and we have some stuff that we don't fully understand going on. Others of it we have a better understanding of why we respond to certain situations in certain ways. But humans have a ability to respond to crisis situations in ways that are bad and ways that are good. But the way that we direct machines to help us in those situations can magnify the bad or magnify the good. And I think that's kind of the example that we see here as we look at this lesson. When you're faced with a big problem, rarely is the answer what some people, executives might look for, whatever, like, oh, let's make a machine learning model that can just solve that problem. Like, big problems usually require some sort of complex answers that is some combination of humans and machines. And the best answer is humans and machines working in unison, doing the things that they're best at with good interfaces with each other, with good communication.
And we see two interesting elements of that in this scene, right? One is that Cooper has shown sort of mistrust of this Tars robot character continuously throughout the movie to this point or whatever. But when it comes down to it, he's like, I'm going to trust you to go save a human's life because that's the only option I've got, right? So I'm going to use it as best I can. So that's a new thing for him. But the other thing we see him doing is trying to sort of jury rig the engines to restart again. There's a sequence of like trying to flood them with fuel so that you can have, there's something which is not exactly the normal way you would do that job, but he's just trying to take advantage of the technology in a slightly non-obvious way to fix the unexpected problem that's also outside of your operating parameters, right? If you have a problem that isn't in your normal expected way of doing things, then you're going to have to solve it in a not expected way of doing things, right? And that's another lesson I think we see a lot in leadership, right? Is that you will, when presented with an unexpected situation that's outside of your domain, standard operating procedure will often not get it done, right? That's the point where you need the human creativity, the whack it on the side of with a hammer or the whatever, right? But that's the point where you need to try some non-obvious combinations of solutions.
Yeah, and even when you look at a machine like Jarvis, or even once Jarvis in Iron Man, right, or in Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's like an extremely powerful AI that's augmented eventually with an Infinity Stone, and yet it's still a bit synthetic, right? Even Vision is still kind of synthetic, and I think he's designed like that. So it's like, this is what we're going to try to pull apart in this series of episode 101 to 110 here. What really is it that makes humans humans, and how can we best operate with these machines? So one thing that we like to do with that is try to take away some practical applications, Brian, because a lot of us are, working people. We have families that we're looking for solutions for how to raise them, or, how to interact with them properly, or how to empower them. And we try to just kind of pull in some ideas that we thought about here. So talk to me about maybe a practical application or a takeaway that we have from this lesson of how Cooper and the team navigate this crisis on Miller's planet.
Right. So one of the things we like about this framework on WonderTour is the analogies, right? And one of the standard practical applications is just try to figure out, if you're in a situation, look at it through this lens and see if it scans, right? Is there a giant wave? Did I just learn about a crisis? Like this is one of those giant wave situations where swift action is important, right? Or we have a problem. Do I recognize the behaviors of some of my team members, right? Is somebody frozen? Is somebody carrying on doing the job that was the original job that may no longer be the most priority or the relevant? Is there somebody on the team that can do something that I can't that might help? Right? You can look for these archetypes, right? So, what we see Cooper doing, exactly as you said, right? He recognizes that a hard decision needs to be made quickly and isn't afraid to just like decide on behalf of the team, right? He looks for opportunities to get the team moving, to give assignments out, to try to solve one sub problem at a time and figure out how to do as many things as possible. And he uses the stress, he uses the impending threat as motivation rather than as a hindrance, right? So those are all things that we can all do, right? Those are all things that we can look for. I'm sitting in a meeting and somebody brings up a big problem. I can look at that and decide how pressing it is. And depending on how pressing it is, how quickly I need to make a decision and what my available options might be, and look around at the resources and the team and see, maybe I might recognize that, I'm freezing here. Like I spent the last 10 minutes freaking out and that's not helping anybody. I'm just standing outside the back of the ship while the wave rolls on us, right? I might not be the leader that I wanted to be in that moment. And I can look at that too.
That's really good. I think what you just figured out there about the personas in a crisis, look for different personas, try to figure out who is freezing up, try to figure out who is an ostrich with their head in the ground, just like, nope, there's nothing going on here. Try to figure out who is mobilized, but maybe not integrated to an overall strategy. And then also, as we're talking about how humans interact with machines, understand that machines have a unique advantage in a crisis because they don't have emotions. So you can drive the machine to do something very quickly and very reliably as long as there's very clear directive given to the machine. So the machine can allow you, in combination with those other personas, to get unstuck, because the crisis, inherently at the beginning of a crisis, you're stuck in some hole, basically, of some kind, probably not of your own making even usually, but you have to figure out, what do we do next? It's like, well, you have to get unstuck. And the machines, the data, all that, the models, they can help you to get unstuck. They're not the answer. If somebody's preaching, oh, all we need is a predictive model to solve this problem, then I'm usually skeptical of that as a solution. But
Right.
you do have this idea that recognition that we are in a crisis of some kind. It doesn't have to be life threatening like it is in Interstellar right here on the planet, or literally existence
Yeah.
threatening. But to be able to then move forward and get unstuck requires the identification of those personas, what they're going through emotionally, and how to partner them best with machines in order to move forward.
And the only thing I wanted to add maybe was as just calling back to what you said earlier about purpose, right? Is that one of the recognitions in that moment is that, you know, the most important purpose right now may have shifted, right? It may not be we really need to get the data off this planet anymore. Like that might not be the most important thing, or we need to get this planet ready to colonize. Like, okay, those are gone. That's not a thing anymore, right? The purpose now is get the spaceship in the air. Let's get out of here, right? Then the super higher level purpose maybe didn't change, but you can't really work on that right this very second. We're in survival mode, or we're in recovery mode, or we're in solve this one problem mode. And so that's another thing, is to understand that you might have these layered purposes, and that you need to recognize which one you're working on right now and how it relates to the other purposes. And you may have to pivot. You may have to identify that some things need to be left behind for the moment or permanently, depending on what you've learned.
Wow, that's brilliant. As always with WonderTour, we end up picking up things along the way that we didn't really plan for or didn't assume going in. We might have seen Interstellar a dozen times. I personally have. But
Yes.
haven't been able to pick these things up before. But by going through this journey, we sometimes call this middle moment here the mountaintop, where we go and we focus on one moment and try to figure out, what does it say about the whole terrain? What does it say about the journey that we're going on? And those moments are never the whole journey, but they do allow us to see the journey through a certain lens, which allows us to kind of better orient ourselves to the model for how we can be good leaders, how we can embody heroic character, things like that.
Right. And the reason that this works, the reason that you can look at a movie about space exploration and derive leadership lessons, right, is because as humans we're primed to look for archetypes and analogies. We're primed to look for these examples, but that includes the people who wrote and filmed these movies, right? Is they put into this what they saw as the greatest leaders they've ever worked with, or they put into this what they saw as the archetypes of history that were the ones that have been looked up to, right? And so these stories resonate not just because they're fun to watch as stories, but also because the human conversations about what does that look like, have a lot of repetition to them, right? And have a lot of common elements. And this is a good way for us to sort of digest them, because it's like you said, it's really easy for me to picture, like right now in this moment, am I being Luke Skywalker, right? Am I being Cooper and I'm making a decision, or am I standing behind the spaceship freaking out about the giant wave, right? It's very easy for me to zoom out just far enough to ask myself which one of those things I'm doing, right? That's easier than like which of the 7 leadership books that I've read, which paragraph would point me in the direction of what I should do right now. It's like, anyway, am I standing up behind the spaceship freaking out? That's probably not the right response here.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that narrative really drives us as humans. I've heard it said by psychologists that your mindset, while it is very practically mechanical, essentially, it operates kind of like a process, a way for you to filter how you're going to respond to things around
Mm-hmm.
you. You experience it very narratively.
Right.
So you build it and you
Yeah. You
understand
tell
it
yourself,
narratively.
yeah, you're constantly reframing it in terms of, oh, this is the story that I'm in. Oh, this is the story of my situation, right? These are, you whittle down the facts so it looks like it's got some sort of continuity. And so, yeah, but you can do the same thing projecting forward, right? You can freak out, or you can get paralyzed by the future, or you can construct the story and say, all right, I'm going to decide to be Cooper in this situation, or I'm going to decide to be Murph in this situation, or one of the other characters from this, and like, okay, this is the path forward. This is what's going to be required.
Awesome, Brian. Well, this has been a great Wonder Tour 101 going on with you. Let's hit some key takeaways here. We started out and talked about our tough question, which is really, how should we pursue technology? As leaders, we have an influence on the world. How can we be like Cooper with our usage of technology, or learn not to be like him if the need be? But I think what we took away is that Cooper is always attached to his mission and his purpose above the technology. He'll use technology to get to an end, but he's, even as this super innovative engineer, he's not just creating with technology just because it's cool, which can be an easy thing to fall into, or because it's feasible. He's doing it because it provides some value to humans, because it advances the purpose of humans. We talked a little bit about human machine interactions, and using the mountaintop of Miller's Planet, we talked about how Cooper, first and foremost, leverages his own character, his own abilities, and then leverages the team's abilities around him in order to solve for a crisis. He uses machines for what they're best at by sending TARS to go save Amelia, and he uses humans for what they're best at as well. And then we talked about some practical applications. How do we handle those tough decisions, those external changes that impact our direction or might feel like they're going to derail our purpose or something like that? The giant wave, so to speak, that is coming down on us. And we kind of took away from that we want to leverage, quick decision making when it's required. We want to look at the different personas of our team members, try to understand where people are at emotionally, and then try to unstick the situation. Get the people who are frozen up or the people who are burying their head in the sand out of it, partner them with machines where possible to expedite the process, where machines can do their best work, or where maybe data, for example, could be a machine type thing, can help things to move forward. And what that allows us to do is maybe not to solve for everything in this crisis, right? They still lose all of this time. They still come back to this absolutely, we didn't even get into the heart-wrenching scene when they experience the meeting the old Romilly and seeing that they've just lost all this time and the videos that come in from their loved ones. But what they end up doing is keeping the bigger mission on track, so to speak.
Right. And the only other thing I would add would be the other lesson is about using the resources at hand, even in non-obvious ways. Right, when the problems are not in within the domain that you're familiar with, and you may have to have solutions that are also not in the domain you're familiar with, and you use whatever tools are at hand, and that will spark some creativity. Right, that is the point at which we are most creative.
Awesome.
All right, well, that was fun. Episode 101 of Lead Wisely by WonderTour is in the can. We will hope you come back and join us again for our next episode. We will continue discussion of the movie Interstellar, and we're going to get a little bit deeper into the plot and a little bit deeper into the philosophy. We're going to talk about gravity and time. We're going to have a lot of fun. So really looking forward to joining us. And in the meantime, as always, just remember, character is destiny.